Hey, what's up, guys? How's everybody doing? It's been forever since I've done a video like this, so just bear with me. We're actually going to kick it off. I'm going to switch up the order for the HorrorFest. First of all, welcome to the 2022 LaneFlix October HorrorFest. We're going to be doing probably like 12 by the end of this. I cut a few because a bunch of stuff happened. I don't even want to get into it. I just had a major setback, so I am working now on doing all the videos, so appreciate you guys staying tuned. The Friday the 13th remake from 2009. Against the advice of locals and police, Clay, played by Jared Padalecki, scours the eerie woods surrounding Crystal Lake for his missing sister. But the rotting cabins of an abandoned summer camp are not the only things he finds. Hockey mask killer Jason Voorhees lies in wait for a chance to use his razor-sharp machete on Clay and the group of college students who have come to the forest to party. The weird part about this movie is that it is a remake of the first, but it's a remake of the first 3 films if you look at it. So the pre-credits scene is basically summing up like the basic statement of the first movie in like 2 to 5 minutes, something like that. And then after the credits, the first group of teenagers we encounter, where it seems to be there's a final girl, but then you don't know if she gets killed at the end of that scene. That basically sums up part 2. And then the rest of the movie, the like meat and potatoes, is part 3. So it's just funny to me that they thought, hey, let's my cat is trying to get in the door. They thought it was a good idea to kind of reboot the franchise, not just like one movie. And I think they wanted to bypass a lot of the minutia of the first 3 movies, so they just said, fuck it, let's make it one movie. So pretty good idea. It definitely gives off the proper impression of a Friday the 13th movie, especially to a modern audience where the effects are just so much more convincing. I guess the irreverence for the characters is a little more prevalent than normal because most of them are like douchey, like college kids, so you feel for them even less than you do for just kids fucking around at summer camp, So it's a little more fun to watch these kids get killed, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Right at the beginning, I love the red stained studio credits. As to me, it felt like a middle finger to like censorship or the studio system in general in a way, because it's also a thing in the Evil Dead remake, which we're going to talk about later. But it's very simple, so I could be looking way too far into this, but to me it just feels like, because studios like to censor movies and take out the gore and the sex and stuff like that, the fact that they like blood stained in a way the studio to me was just kind of like saying that we don't care about the censors, this is our movie, this is the movie we wanted to make. So I just appreciated that, I guess, because you never know when you're going to get a movie that is by the numbers just crap, or you're going to get a movie that is a pretty good rendition of what they're supposed to be going for, The opening credits tell us the core of what we need to know about part 1, like I was saying. Pamela Voorhees, Jason's mother, was nuts. She thought Jason drowned at the camp and started murdering the camp counselors, blaming them for the negligence, I guess, that led to his death. Then we get a pseudo part 2, as I said before, with the first group of teenagers. And Wade, the kind of nerdy kid who is supposed to be finding this like bushel of weed, I guess, he finds this like old campground, and then they find out it's old Camp Crystal Lake, and so he tells them the story of the first part of what we saw. So the camp scene is funny and endearing, but these are ultimately douchey, horrid teenagers. Their mission: to steal grown crops of marijuana and resell it back home. which is just such a 2000s type premise. I mean, it's pretty bad. Wade goes out to find some green treasure when he sees a shadowy large figure charging him. I love how this backlight is done so we don't see much of Jason. We just kind of see the silhouette of him, which is kind of what we're used to in the early stages of the Friday the 13th movies. So, some clues in the cabin that the two more likable protagonists find, a little more like relatable characters. They find like whistles, which I assume could only be belonging to the former counselors that were killed there, just kind of like tied up on a shelf, you know, and there's like 8 of them. And then they also find a cameo of a woman who looks like, I think the girl's name is Whitney, and it's very like, what? But then the boyfriend guy gives her the cameo and is like, you should keep it, it's cool, it looks like you. So the kills start very heavy and they don't let up in this movie. I watched the killer cut, so it's supposed to be like the most brutal cut of the movie. Jason ties the busty girl up in a sleeping bag, bear traps the douchey guy, and cuts up the nerd Wade in the woods. And not only does he tie the girl up in the sleeping bag, he hangs her like a rotisserie over a fire. So, like, she's melting and the sleeping bag's melting to her, and she's just like, it's horrifying because it's like, oh my god, like, Jason usually kills so viscerally. It was weird for him to kill in a way that was so indirect and torturous, you know. Mike and Whitney get attacked at the cabin by Jason, and this actually results in Mike's death, and Whitney seemingly escaping. Richie, the nerd, or no, I'm sorry, not the nerd kid. Richie's the kind of douchey guy. He gets his head like chopped down the middle after he's been bear trapped, which is horrible. And Whitney looks to be dead because the final little cut of this scene, right before they go into the modern story of the movie, it has 3 beginnings, so it's weird. Is Jason charging her, you know, with an axe or I think machete, whatever he had, and her just screaming, and then it cuts. So you're like, okay, she's probably dead. And then we jump to 6 weeks later. So this is, what, a month and a half after the events that have taken place. Basically here we have part 3, which is, I would say, the most Jason Voorhees of the first trilogy of the Friday the 13th films, because, you know, he gets his classic look in that movie. It sets up the kind of pattern that a lot of the movies end up following. It's just the most classic Friday the 13th movie is part 3, I would say. But yeah, we follow a man played by Padalecki of Supernatural who is searching for his sister Whitney, who obviously is the woman who looked like the woman in the cameo and who seemed to be killed at the 6 weeks earlier scene. 2 guys joking about cheating on the bong is like frat humor, you know. I really dig Jared Padalecki in this, especially as the protagonist here. He brings a humanity and a reality to the characters almost none of the others do, because it's Friday the 13th. Most of the time they're just stupid teenager young people that just like want to have fun, you know, and he actually has a noble intention in the film, which is different for these movies. Not necessarily for all of them. It was 3 or 4 where a guy was searching for his sister. So that's what I mean, is they're kind of remaking the series as a movie. So the redneck guy who is in the diner or convenience store, whatever it is really funny. I love his chaotic antics. Topless water skiing is always fun, for sure. The boat kills are great. Nolan, the sociopath, gets an arrow through the head. The girlfriend gets hit by the speeding boat, then skewered through her own head, giving us one last flash from this sociopath-loving blonde. Clay and Jenna are checking out cabins when afternoon turns to night. I dig the lighting composition here much better than your average slasher flick. Just the angles and the way they would use the light to kind of illuminate everything. It was nice, for sure. Leaving the campsite, Clay and Jenna barely evade Jason, who has with him a headless corpse. So it looks like he's kind of returning to his lair, and he has one of the people he just killed like over his shoulder with no head. We see Jason has a great setup in his little HQ, whatever you want to call it. He has a light system that he turns on to see if anyone is trying to get away. and his general knowledge of the woods surrounding his little hut, or whatever you want to call it, is pretty extensive. It's crazy how well he knows it, but it also makes perfect sense because it's the only place he knows. So he also has a spider web of strings and bells to tell him when someone crosses certain points of the perimeters. Then we have a tease where Clay pulls the string and rings the bell just next to his sister underground, a hostage of Jason's. So we see finally that Whitney is okay. She's not dead. So for some reason, Jason is keeping her alive and just kind of keeping her there. And there's like a really close moment where it's like, oh, are they going to find her? And then to no avail. It's actually interesting what they do with Jason. He seems to be bringing these dead kids as a tribute to Whitney, who looks like the woman in the cameo. That woman, Pamela Voorhees, his mother. I do find it interesting that almost every horror reboot has given the main villain or monster, whatever you want to call him, a mommy issue. Because Jason always did, but you know, with the Rob Zombie Halloweens, it was all about him and his mom. I think in the Freddy Krueger, the Nightmare on Elm Street remake, I believe there was something to do with his mom. So it's just weird to me. They're like, okay, fuck it. They give away the mommy issues to slashers like they do flying to superheroes. So he sharpens his machete, has a tantrum, and goes to hurt Whitney. He can't. He's stopped by her likeness to his mother, and when she says his name, forget about it. I do love that they keep with the if they're fucking, they're dying type theme, because all the counselors in the original would shirk their duties and fool around, thus Jason almost drowning, and that being why he and his mother both kill these teenagers originally. And then what was his fucking name? It was like Wallace or something like that. The Asian kid's death is fucking horrific. It's like one of the worst deaths in the whole movie. It's horrible. Jason cuts the power just after Trent and Bree, are doing their nasty in there. The final kills are pretty good. Bree gets skewered on a coat hanger. Lawrence just gets ran through with an axe. When Trent screams, it's pretty good. Jason pins Trent on the back spoke of a tow truck that drives away panicked. Jenna gets stabbed. Clay and Whitney are the final siblings. So even the cool girl Jenna that's been hanging out with Clay trying to help him out gets killed. She's done. She's gone. I really appreciate how they lit and just designed Jason's look in this. Disheveled, disfigured hillbilly who wears a hockey mask and carries a rusty but sharp machete. The final mistake, after the siblings work together to lure, trap, and kill Jason, guess how they dispose of him? They drop him in the fucking pond. So of course, after a few moments of hopeful peace, the siblings are assaulted again by Jason from under the dock. A nod to the original ending with Jason dragging the woman from the boat into the lake. A better than average reboot to a beloved slasher horror franchise. My only question, where's the next one? I gave this one a 7.6 out of 10. It's one of the better remakes, I would say, of a horror movie. It gets Jason right. It gets the kills right. It gets the theme right. I love it. I mean, it's one of the best remakes of a slasher movie, I would say. And yeah, I mean, the characters are easily at least 10%, 15% better than your average just crappy slasher characters. And the production value is nice. And yeah, that's it. I will see you guys. Appreciate you listening, and happy Halloween.